everybody, my name is John Life, and welcome back to 6 Days of Snow, guys. It has been a long time since we played this game. If you don't remember, we were riding in this taxi on this snowy mountain, going to see our wife, if I believe correctly, up in the mansion, and she's an artist, if I believe correctly. So anyways, let's get into it, everybody. And here we are, guys, back to the mansion. We are just entering the mansion. Anyways, let's go. I apologize for arriving so late. My train was delayed. It's quite alright. I expect as much, given all the snow. The woman I perceived was, once again, Miss Kakiuchi. Replied, I'm happy to receive any customers, no matter how late they may arrive. Business has been slow. What do you expect? She asked, with a touch of wire amusement to her tone. Her voice was soft, but there was a certain bite to it, some hardness I was not able to pin down. Perhaps a touch of hardness was only to be expected coming from a woman who have lived in this inn high up in the mountain for very long. Had she been softer, I wondered when her husband was still alive. I would never know. Ooh, there she is. Now, Miss Kakiuchi. How can I describe her? Words fail me at the same time, and they fail me even now. Look at her, guys. I suppose if I had to put a single word to it, she was beautiful. But that wasn't entirely right. She was the kind of woman who had been beautiful once, beautiful enough to drive men to distraction, but old age has tempted some of her beauty, softening the edges, so it's no longer had an acute, piercing effect. That was a good thing, I think. Such beauty can be used as a weapon, like an arrow, but this was an arrow whose tip had been sanded smooth. Her hair was dark and glossy, cut into a neat bob reminiscent of Kokeshi doll. It was an unusual choice for an older woman. She must have been in her 40s. That only served her to heighten my interest in her. Her eyes were the color of roasted tea leaves, and they were lined with thick, long lashes. When she blinked, her lashes fluttered in a beguiling manner that cast shadows against her face. Her skin was pale, and though there were some wrinkles around her mouth, it was unblemished, save for 2 small moles no bigger than pinheads beneath her right eye. She wore a modest kimono, I'm not sure if I'm saying these right, of muted colors, and stood there regally. Her hands held at her front. If I looked from afar, one could have been forgiven for thinking she was 20 years younger than she really was. But time waits for no man. At any rate, Miss Kakiuchi didn't seem to be that kind of person who steeped herself in her own nostalgia. Everything about her, from her tone of her voice, the way she stood, suggested she was far too sensible to bother with such nonsense. She wasn't sentimental. Something about her posture almost seemed defy Deafy's sentiment. She wasn't like me. I suppose we were quite a poor match. In any event, I hope you enjoy your stay at the Azami Inn, said Mrs. Kakiuchi. It was a line she must have delivered many times, and she said it beautifully, like a skilled artisan might pluck a heart-rending melody from a koto. I must confess, I felt rather abashed. I had been imagining in the city-born and bred hubris that folks who resided in the countryside were simpler than I, somehow. I had been wrong. I am Kakiuchi Kaio, she said, by means of making my acquaintance, though there was a certain reticence to her tone. It's nice to meet you. Likewise, I said, bowing my head, my name is Tanabe. Tanabe Ijai. Remember Tanabe, guys. Mr. Tanabe Mrs. Kakeuchi repeated, with a small nod of her head. When she said my name, commonplace though it was, its properties seemed to change in some curious manner. European alchemists might have striven for years to turn her metals into gold, but Miss Kakeuchi, I'm actually going to say, had succeeded in a certain kind of thaumaturgy of her own. Well, if I need to introduce myself any further, I have been running the Azami Inn for some 14 years, ever since the death of my husband. I'm sure Yasuke has told you about that already. He might have mentioned a thing or two, yes? You don't need to spare my feelings. I know what the people around here say. Do they enjoy the gossip? There's not much else to gossip about. I don't think Mr. Hanada meant anything by it. He was just making the conversation. At my expense of my dignity, I don't doubt, said Mrs. Kakeuchi icily. Though Yasuke hadn't said anything incriminating, I found myself feeling guilty, as if I actually conspired against her. Let us move on from the subject, she said, noticing my discomfort. It's an unpleasant, particularly after such a long journey now. Miss Kakeuchi explained the general running of the inn to me. When meals were prepared, where the hot springs were, and who to speak to if I had a complaint, while I nodded dumbly, stunned into silence. So, she said, once she had finished her short business spiel, I trust this is satisfactory? That is more than satisfactory, thank you, I said, stuttering. Why was I stuttering? Being around Mrs. Kakeuchi, held under the steady gaze of her dark brown eyes, had the most incredible effect upon me. I felt not like a grown man with 2 sons, but a naughty child being scolded by my father for playing too zealously about the Zelkova tree in our garden. Miss Kakeuchi was probably a few years younger than I, but she regarded me archly, like one who had seen far more than I could ever imagine. I know it might sound rather harsh, but I understood immediately why the residents of the nearby village didn't like her very much. She was not a likable woman. I shall get Reiko to show you your room. She may as well make herself useful, said Mrs. Kakeuchi. With that declaration, the proprietress turned, her bobbled hair fluttering, and called out in tones that would have made an emperor balk. Reiko, we have a customer! There was a shuffling of feet as Reiko burst in to answer her mother's call. I pictured her as skinny, uncomfortably so, with big eyes and lips pulled into a permanent frown. Oh, frown. Froa. Everyone's gonna say something about that. Her head bent, and her gait stumbling. But the Reiko who answered Miss Kakeuchi's summons was rather different. My imagination has betrayed me yet again. She was rather young. That much was true. Still a teenager, I suppose, and she was slight, but not in an awkward manner. Oh my god, look who it is, guys! It's Reiko! Oh my god, Reiko! Miss Kakeuchi and Reiko and Tanabe so far. Her limbs were pale and slender, and she moved like a little ballerina. Yes, you called, Mother? She looked just like Mrs. Kakeuchi did, or had done. I imagined before old age had set to fit, or sap away her beautiful charms. Reiko even had a beauty mark beneath her eye, though it was located under her left eye, not her right. Other than that, it was an almost perfect facey smile of her mother's, like she was some kind of copy. Copy! Uh-oh! A homunculus child raised in a glass jar? But these thoughts were rather too fanciful. This is Mr. Tanabe and Mrs. Kakeuchi, said Mrs. Kakeuchi, gesturing towards me. He has recently arrived from Tokyo. Can you take his bag to show him his room? It's the one you were preparing earlier on the west side. Of course, said Reiko, with a small bow of her head. I shall do it at once. She bent to pick up my bag, first brushing the sleeve of her kimono to one side when... No, that will never do. Reiko flinched at the reprimand. She was now halfway between retrieving my case and standing straight. The sleeves of her kimono were still rolled back, and I could see her arm. They were as pale as the snow fell outside, shot through with delicate blue veins. Though I wanted to, I could not bring myself to look away. When are you picking up the luggage, Reiko? You shouldn't let your sleeve bunch up above your elbows. It's unseemly, said Mrs. Kakuchi. I'm sorry. Don't apologize, said Mrs. Kakiuchi, coolly. For I have told you this time and time again. Try so remember next time, please. All right. Reiko sounded so despondent. Any words of measurement I have, though, to offer died on my tongue. I have already divined during the most perfunctory of greetings that her mother scolded her quite a lot. I love it so far. Like, it's so interesting. It's like the bond of Reiko and Mrs. Kakuchi. They don't like each other. Maybe they don't like each other. Reiko led me to my room in silence, my suitcase held in her arms. If the case was heavy for her, I did not know. She didn't slow down, and neither did she, hampered by her burden. Her footsteps were slow and regular, like that of clockwork, hemmed in by her kimono. She could only take short, dainty steps, right foot in front of the left, then the left in front of the right. Then repeat. Oh, that snow is beautiful. Tap, 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 tap. I followed along behind her like an attentive schoolboy. The wooden hallway was dimly lit, and I could hear the sound of the wind whistling outside. My footsteps made the floor creak ominously. I tried to think of things to say, but nothing sounded quite right. This weather's awful around here, isn't it? I wouldn't have been too pedestrian. You really do have beautiful eyes. Would have been far too forthcoming. Is your mother always like that? Would have been too personal. Despite having many things I wanted to say, I could say nothing. I didn't know why, but I wanted to talk to this girl. Maybe it was a pity because of the way she had flinched when her mother had spoken to her, and really, she must have been lonely. I wonder if Reiko is abused by her mother. If Yusuke suspected Miss Kakuchi of melancholia, then what about her daughter? Reiko's hair fluttered behind her, inky black like a veil of darkness. But though she was small, Reiko did not tarry in her march. Instead, she continued as quiet as a mirror, and just as inscrutable. Tap, 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 tap. Even back then, I was enamored with her. Maybe it was the romance of the situation. How could you blame me? There was something very poetic about Reiko's plight and uncommon beauty, hidden from prying eyes, lost amidst the ice and snow. Tap, tap, tap. After 20 seconds or so, though it seemed longer, Reiko's footsteps stopped. She halted by a nondescript wooden door, much like the others that lined the hallway. Your room, she said, by means of an explanation, not that it needed explaining. I thanked her all the same and took my case from her outstretched hand. Constructed. Our fingertips brushed for less than a second. If I had been a younger boy, Kenji's age perhaps, I fear I might have blushed. It's rather late and we don't normally serve food at this time, said Reiko, addressing the floor rather than my face. But I'm sure the cook would be more happy to prepare something for you. Mother said you traveled a long way. It's alright, I replied. Thought it had been some 5 hours since I had last eaten. I don't want to inconvenience you. But you're a guest, said Reiko. This time. She did lift her hands. Doesn't that give you the right to inconvenience us just a little? You're paying for the privilege. Ah. I blinked. Words once more were conspicuously absent. She was actually smiling. So she did not dislike me. And neither was she afraid. She couldn't have been, to joke with me so casually, for that was what it was. A joke? I couldn't stop myself from laughing. Oh my god, look at it! Oh my god, she's blushing! It was a small laugh, really, but then again, Reiko's smile had been rather demure. A hearty chuckle wouldn't have suited the atmosphere, and I'd never been one to laugh that much. I'm too self-conscious, but Reiko's made me laugh all the time. Well, you might have a point, I said. I suppose I wouldn't mind some green tea. I need a bit of warming up. I know, said Reiko with a nod of her head. It can be horribly cold around here. I hope my room has a kotatsu. Of course, we live in the mountains. It would be a sin not to have a kotatsu. A kotatsu? Kotatsu? Our guests might catch their deaths of cold, she said, throwing her arms in the air for emphasis. I smiled. Well, I wouldn't want that. I don't intend to stay here that long. Though the mountains were picturesque, I did not fancy extending my trip. A most unfortunate side effect of the death is that it tends to other people immobile, tied to one place for the rest of their, well, not lives. I don't blame you, said Reiko seriously. I wouldn't stay if I had the choice. Which I don't. A small sigh. Oh, well, I wouldn't say things like that. Mother would be cross with me. She'd say it was bad for business. I think things are stacked against us already. But what do I know? You seem to be quite knowledgeable, in my humble opinion. Thank you, with a bow of her head. Her hair fluttered, caught in a sudden draught of icy air. I knew it was because of the wind, but seized by sentimentally, I could help but imagine it was because she was so very full of life. Reiko was livelier by far than she had been before. The sudden contrast between her demure, trampled lily person and the new one I witnessing, witty, funny, and unabashedly charming, caught me off guard. Could the caterpillar have emerged from its chrysalis in a scatter of 5 seconds? But no such transformation do not take so rapidly, not in the real world. I wondered, did Reiko's newfound freeness have anything to do, perhaps, with the absence of her mother? Alright, I'll see about the green tea and perhaps a simple bowl of rice porridge. I think you should get something in your stomach. Do I look peaky? Reiko pretended to ponder, one hand beneath her chin. Perhaps a bit tired. Long trains journey do that, especially at my age. I wonder. I've never been on a train before, said Reiko. There was something wistful about her tone. Her eyes were misty and far away. She was so transparent her thoughts flickered across the surface of her mind like ripples in a pool. But then Reiko shook her head and clapped her hands, and the illusion was over. Right, green tea, rice porridge. Please feel free to make yourself at home and discover the delights of the Izami Inn. Thank you for your hospitality, I said, bowing my head. I intend to. Oh, and it's perfectly fine if you want to use the kotatsu, but make sure the fire in the bridger has burnt down before you sleep. We wouldn't want you to start a fire. No, I said with a shake of my head, we wouldn't want that. Not at all, Reiko repeated. But I couldn't help but wonder. Inside her amber eyes, I swore I could see flickering flames. Oh, look at this beautiful area. Wow, did you guys see this beautiful area? Holy, time flies, guys. Reiko was as good as her word. She returned to my room momentarily, the green tea and the rice porridge on a tray. They were both hot. She did not linger, Though I would like to converse with her further, that would have been improper. A woman should not tarry for so long in a man's private quarters. Though Reiko was not a woman really, so much as a girl. Reiko's kimono flattened out her fingers, making it nigh impossible to tell whether she had curves or not. But her age was apparently by the tone of her voice and the softening of her skin. Not that such detail improved the situation. If anything, it made them worse. A woman in a man's room at night is improper enough, but a teenage girl? That is truly a source of scandal. Scandal in the eyes of the newspaper, but a sensationalist romance if transmitted by the hand of an author. It all depends on how you frame things. In any case, Reiko departed with that now familiar tap, tap, tap of her wooden sandals against the tatami mats, and I was left alone. The green tea was delicious, the leaves brewed perfectly, and the rice porridge was thick and nourishing. I enjoyed the food a good deal, though not as much as, Sachiko knows exactly how I prefer my tea, and she can steep the leaves in perfect accordances to my preferences, down to the last millisecond. Of course, Sachiko's tea would be superior. I've been married to her for more than 20 years. It is most curious phenomenon, however, that men accustomed to perfection will begin to tire of it. Is there anything more selfish than a man who cannot be satisfied? Sometimes I have to wonder. It was still snowing outside. I could see the snow in the air falling thick and fast beyond my window. The sight of it made me feel warmer than perhaps I was, for the room was cold and seemed to bleed heat from the tatami mats. Fortunately, the kokatsu helped. Or it's like the kotatsu. I don't know how to say that. I'm just going to say kotatsu. Warmed both inside and out, and tired from my journey, I turned in the night half an hour later. I think I might have dreamt about... Uh-oh! So, Tanabe is gonna fall in love with Reiko. And there it is. The first day. The second day. That was a long second day. That was at least a 40-minute second day. Anyways, guys, that is going to wrap it up for 6 days of snow. We got past the first day. These days are longer, but I like having longer episodes for you guys. If you guys enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like. This was very interesting. It was very interesting of a game so far. I don't know if Reiko is getting abused by her mother, and I don't know if Mr. Tanabe, which is us, is like in love with Reiko, who is a teenager and he's really old. Very interesting storyline so far, but it should get you guys a little interested, because what is up with the mother, Mrs. Kakuchi? Doesn't it make you guys wonder if she's like an abusive parent or something, and we're going to see something like that and save Reiko or something? I don't really know how the game is, but thank you everyone for taking the time to watch today's video. Make sure to leave a like if you enjoyed. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't. So thanks again, and I will catch you all in the next video. Take care, guys.